Steven Spielberg was just 26 years old when he stepped onto the beaches of Martha's Vineyard to direct what would become one of the most famous films in history, Jaws. Back then, nobody knew the chaos, tension, and strange accidents that would happen behind the scenes, and even fewer knew about one particular day, July 15, 1974, when a scene was filmed that became so shocking, so disturbingly realistic, that Universal Pictures decided the public could never see it in its full form. On that day, during the shooting of the now infamous Alex Kintner beach attack, a photographer captured a set of images showing what really happened. For decades, the photos and uncut footage were locked away, almost like a secret the studio hoped everyone would forget. There was no forgetting for the people who were there. Test audiences who saw an early cut of that scene reacted in a way the filmmakers never expected. 13 fainted in their seats. 2 vomited on the spot, and countless others turned away from the screen in horror. The studio panicked. In an era before streaming, before instant rewinds, before people could casually watch gore at home, this was too much for the big screen. They cut the scene down, hid the footage, and moved on. But the truth has a way of resurfacing. In 2018, that uncut version appeared again, thanks to a crew member who had kept a copy all these years. Film experts and fans alike were stunned. It wasn't a mechanical problem or a special effects glitch. No, the problem was how real it looked. That moment, that burst of realism was never part of the plan. To understand how we got to that day, you have to go back to the very beginning, before Spielberg, before the cameras, before the chaos at sea. In 1973, 2 Hollywood producers, Richard Zanuck and David Brown, stumbled onto a story that would change their lives. It started in the most casual way imaginable. Brown was flipping through Cosmopolitan magazine, which happened to be edited by his wife, Helen Gurley Brown, when he noticed a short blurb about an unpublished novel called Jaws. The description ended with a single line: "This might make a good movie." That tiny sentence was enough to spark something. Brown showed the blurb to Zanuck, and the 2 men read the manuscript that same night. By morning, they were convinced it was one of the most exciting stories they had ever encountered. They didn't hesitate. They went after the film rights immediately, paying $175,000, which is over $1.2 million today, before the book even hit store shelves. It was a gamble. At that moment, all they had was a thrilling manuscript, a title, and 2 producers excited enough to risk a small fortune. But when Peter Benchley's Jaws was published in February 1974, their gamble paid off. The novel became a massive hit, staying on the bestseller lists for 44 weeks. The paperbacks sold in the millions. Universal Pictures knew they'd struck gold. The only question now was who would direct it. Enter Steven Spielberg. At 26, Spielberg had just finished The Sugarland Express. Before that, he'd directed Duel, a tense television thriller about a man hunted by a relentless truck driver. Spielberg didn't want Jaws. To him, it was another Predator story, another chase. He worried that he'd be pigeonholed as the guy who does movies about things that stalk you. He even looked into directing other projects like Lucky Lady, but Universal wouldn't let him go. He was under contract, and the studio believed in him. So, reluctantly, Spielberg agreed. What followed was a whirlwind of casting chaos script, rewrites, and behind-the-scenes drama that would test every ounce of his patience. For the role of Hooper, Spielberg first wanted Jon Voight, but the part went to Richard Dreyfuss, unhappy with his own recent work in The Apprenticeship. Of Duddy Kravitz, called Spielberg directly. For Quint, Spielberg approached Lee Marvin and Sterling Hayden, but both turned him down. The role went instead to Robert Shaw, whose fierce on-set personality would become both a blessing and a curse. The shoot began on May 2nd, 1974, and from day one, it was a disaster in slow motion. The script wasn't finished. The mechanical sharks built to bring the terrifying great white to life didn't work. The budget began to spiral. What was supposed to cost $3.5 million quickly crept toward $12 million. The shooting schedule, planned for 55 days, stretched to 159. Spielberg had made a bold choice that would haunt him for months. he decided to film not in a safe, controlled studio tank, but out at sea, in the unpredictable waters off Martha's Vineyard. On paper, it was perfect. The location had shallow areas deep enough for the mechanical sharks to operate, while still close enough to shore for equipment. In practice, it was a nightmare. The sea had a mind of its own. Boats drifted out of position. Currents changed without warning. Shots were ruined as the light shifted. Some days, they were lucky to get 2 usable takes. Meanwhile, locals who were at first thrilled by Hollywood's arrival began to lose patience as the production dragged on. Someone even dumped fish guts at Spielberg's rented home in protest. And then there were the mechanical sharks, 3 of them, nicknamed Bruce after Spielberg's lawyer. One was designed for swimming on a track, 2 for filming from different angles. They were massive, 25 feet long and weighing over a ton. The first time they put one into the ocean, it sank straight to the bottom. Salt water corroded its machinery. The rubber skin absorbed water swelled and warped. Movements became jerky and unnatural. One day, the shark looked intimidating. The next, it looked like a giant bath toy. Crew members began wearing shirts that read Shark 1, Spielberg 0 inches, and nicknamed the movie Flaws. Spielberg's frustration boiled over more than once. "I'd like to kill this shark," he reportedly shouted on set. Repairs ate up hours, sometimes whole days, leaving actors waiting around, seasick, sunburned, and miserable. Off camera, tension grew between Robert Shaw and Richard Dreyfuss. Shaw, a serious method actor, thought Dreyfuss was cocky. Dreyfuss thought Shaw was a bully. Shaw insulted him constantly, once grabbing him by the throat, another time firing a CO extinguisher at him. He also drank heavily. One night, too drunk to deliver the famous USS Indianapolis speech, Shaw promised Spielberg he could do it the next day sober. He did in 1 perfect take. Ironically, the shark's constant breakdowns forced Spielberg into a creative solution that would make the movie legendary. Instead of showing the shark too often, he decided to suggest its presence. Used yellow barrels skimming the surface, underwater shots from the shark's point of view, and most famously, John Williams' haunting 2-note theme. When Williams first played it for Spielberg, the director laughed. It seemed too simple. But Williams explained that simplicity was the point. It was primal, like a heartbeat in the water. He recorded 47 variations to control the audience's fear. Sometimes slow and quiet, other times fast and pounding. In the final cut, the shark appears for only about 4 minutes, but that's all it needed. Burst out of the water, the suspense had done its work. And that brings us back to the one scene where Spielberg did plan to show the shark in full, the Alex Kintner attack. Filmed on that fateful July day, by mid-July 1974, the Jaws shoot had already earned a reputation as one of the most chaotic in Hollywood history. Equipment failed, tempers flared, and Spielberg was under enormous pressure to deliver something watchable despite the delays and exploding costs. The Alex Kintner scene was supposed to be a turning point, a shocking, unforgettable moment. That would make audiences fear the water without ever showing too much. But Spielberg, still chasing that balance between suspense and impact, decided this one could be more graphic. It was set on a bright summer day at Katama Bay, a location chosen for its shallow water and calm surface. The scene called for a young boy, played by 11-year-old Jeffrey Voorhees, to float on a yellow raft a short distance from shore. Families and beachgoers would be relaxing in the background, unaware of the danger lurking beneath.
Ow.
The mechanical shark would rise from the depths, tear through the raft, drag Alex under in a burst of violence, leaving the water stained red. On paper, it sounded like a straightforward effects sequence. In reality, it was a logistical nightmare. The mechanical shark had been temperamental all summer, but the effects team thought they had it under control for this shoot. They rigged the raft with hidden mechanisms that would cause it to explode, upward as if hit from below, while a special effects crew pumped a mix of colored dye and thickened liquid into the water to simulate blood. Underwater stunt equipment was in place to yank the raft and the young actor down in one sudden motion. Everything was tested repeatedly, but tests in a calm tank are nothing like the open ocean. That day, even the small waves at Katama Bay were enough to throw off timing. The shark's rise, the raft's destruction, and the special effects cues had to line up perfectly. When the cameras rolled, something unexpected happened. As the mechanical shark hit the raft, the special effects rig misfired slightly early. The raft shattered into pieces more violently than planned, sending splinters into the air. At the same time, the stunt pull on Jeffrey was stronger than intended, jerking him downward so abruptly that for a split second, it looked like he was genuinely being yanked under by something powerful. The blood effect, released at almost the same moment, clouded the water in a deep, opaque red. From the camera's perspective, it didn't look staged. It looked like a real attack, fast, chaotic, and horrifying. The extras on the beach, many of them locals, were told to react naturally, but their screams in that take were completely real. Some thought they had just witnessed the boy being hurt for real. Spielberg immediately called cut, and crew members rushed to pull Jeffrey back to the surface. He was fine, shaken, but unharmed, but everyone standing on that beach knew they had just captured something that felt disturbingly real. Spielberg reviewed the playback and realized that while it was exactly the kind of raw fear he wanted, it might also be too much for audiences. Still, he decided to keep it in for the early test screenings. Curious to see how people would react. The reaction was more intense than anyone anticipated. During those first screenings, 13 people fainted in their seats. 2 vomited into popcorn buckets. Others covered their eyes or turned away, unable to watch the moment Alex disappears under the water. The collective gasp was followed by stunned silence. Universal executives were horrified. They feared that such a graphic and realistic sequence would cause parents to walk out, or worse, spark headlines about the film being too violent for younger viewers. And in the mid-1970s, the standards for on-screen violence were much stricter than today's. You could imply horror, but to linger on it, especially when a child was the victim, was risky. After heated debates, the decision was made. The sequence would be trimmed. Spielberg removed the most graphic frames, shortening the shot so the raft's destruction and the blood burst were almost simultaneous, leaving less time for the audience to register the boy's struggle. The uncut footage was archived, locked, away with other unused reels. Officially, it no longer existed. But rumors persisted among film crews and special effects enthusiasts that one copy had been quietly saved. Behind the scenes, the rest of the shoot continued to grind on. The shark problems didn't go away. Some days, Spielberg had to film without it entirely, relying instead on clever camera angles and Williams' score to keep tension alive. The cast's relationships stayed complicated. Roy Scheider, who played Chief Brody, tried to mediate between Shaw and Dreyfuss, but the strain was constant. Shaw, despite his difficult behavior, gave a performance that became iconic. Dreyfuss, though frustrated, delivered the awkward charm and curiosity that made Hooper memorable. By October 6th, after 159 exhausting days, filming finally wrapped. Spielberg didn't even stick around for the last day, worried that the crew might throw him into the water as a prank. He quietly left the island and flew back to Los Angeles. He thought his career might be over. The studio was nervous about the ballooning budget and all the production delays. But when the editing was complete and the score added, something remarkable happened. The movie worked. The tension was unbearable. In the best possible way, audiences didn't care about the shark's limited screen time, in fact. It made the creature scarier. When Jaws premiered in June 1975, it exploded at the box office. It became the highest-grossing film of all time until Star Wars came along 2 years later. People lined up around blocks. Beaches across America saw fewer swimmers that summer. Spielberg went from a young director with something to prove to one of Hollywood's most sought-after filmmakers. Yet for all its success, that original uncut Alex Kintner scene remained unseen by the general public, a ghost of a moment that lived only in the memories of those on set. Then, decades later, in 2018, the ghost came back to life. It happened quietly. A film preservationist, working on restoring archival materials connected to Jaws, was contacted by someone who claimed to have a reel of footage from the 1974 shoot, something never shown in theaters. This person turned out to be a former crew member, now long retired, who had kept a personal copy of the uncut Alex Kintner attack. He said he held onto it not to sell or exploit, because he knew it was a piece of filmmaking history that had been hidden for too long. With Spielberg's blessing, the footage was reviewed privately by a small group of film historians, effects artists, and Jaws enthusiasts. What they saw left them stunned. In the uncut version, the attack unfolds with brutal clarity. The camera lingers just a few seconds longer than in the theatrical cut, but those few seconds make all the difference. The raft explodes into jagged pieces, sending water and splinters flying. Jeffrey Voorhees is yanked under with startling force, his arms flailing for an instant before the water swallows him completely.
Oh, the blood effect is so thick.
Clouds the surface instantly, and the shot holds just long enough for the audience to feel the weight of what they've witnessed. There's no music cue in that moment, just the sound of splashing, screams from the shore, and the faint hiss of the ocean breeze. It feels disturbingly real, more like news footage than a special effect. Those who saw it in 2018 described it as one of the most visceral death scenes ever filmed without the use of computer effects. There was no CGI in 1974, everything was practical, meaning it was created physically, on set, in front of the camera. The power of the moment came from a combination of carefully timed stunts, special effects, misfires, and the genuine reactions of the extras. Even knowing it was staged, viewers found it hard to shake the image from their minds. For a few who had worked on the original film, seeing it again brought back memories of the long, exhausting summer on Martha's Vineyard, the sunburns, the seasickness, the tension, and the moments of pure magic when everything came together. Spielberg himself, in later interviews, acknowledged that while the uncut scene was remarkable in its intensity, he still agreed with the decision to shorten it for the theatrical release. "We wanted suspense, not trauma," he explained. "There's a line. You cross where the audience stops being entertained and starts being disturbed in a way they can't recover from." It was a rare admission from a director whose instincts had been proven right time and again. But it also showed his understanding of how delicate the balance between horror and entertainment can be. The rediscovery of the uncut scene reignited debates among fans about censorship, artistic intent, and the role of graphic violence in storytelling. Some argued that modern audiences, accustomed to far more intense imagery, could handle it easily. Others believed that the restraint shown in the final cut was part of what made Jaws timeless, that by leaving more to the imagination, the fear lingered longer. The footage has never been officially released to the public, though still frames and detailed descriptions have circulated online. Whether Universal will ever make it widely available remains uncertain. For now, it exists as a kind of cinematic, known, discussed, but just out of reach, and yet, even without it, Jaws remains one of the most influential films ever made. It essentially invented the summer blockbuster, set a new standard for suspense, and proved that a young director with vision could turn disaster into triumph. The story of the troubled chute, the malfunctioning shark, the feuding actors, and the creative solutions born from necessity has become as legendary as the movie itself. But for those who know about that day in July 1974, there's an extra layer to the legend, the knowledge that somewhere, in a private archive, lies a few extra seconds of film that pushed Jaws from thrilling into truly terrifying. The Alex Kintner scene, both in its theatrical and uncut forms, captures something essential about filmmaking: the unpredictability of it. You can plan for months, rehearse endlessly, test your equipment until you think nothing can go wrong, and then, in a single moment, something unexpected happens. And it's better, scarier, or more powerful than anything you could have scripted. But that power comes with responsibility. Spielberg's choice to pull back, to give the audience just enough, is part of why Jaws still works nearly 50 years later. It's why, even today, people hum those two notes when they dip a toe into the ocean. It's why the shadow of a fin still makes hearts race. And maybe that's the real lesson of the scene that was too real. Sometimes the scariest thing you can do is not show everything. Sometimes what you leave out is what keeps people talking for decades. And in the case of Jaws, what they left out became one of the most fascinating whispered about pieces of movie history, a moment frozen in time. Hidden from the public eye, and all the more powerful because of the mystery that surrounds it. When the cameras rolled that day in 1974, the crew on set of Jaws knew they were about to film something extreme. Rising from the water came a massive mechanical shark, 225 feet long, weighing over 1.5 tons. This was Bruce, the animatronic monster that took a team of 15 skilled technicians to control. Every time Bruce leapt from the bay, he sent heavy walls of seawater crashing over the camera crew.
Oh.
The plan for the scene was simple but horrifying. A boy named Alex was sitting on a raft and Bruce would burst from below, grab the raft in his steel jaws, and rip it apart in a violent frenzy. The special effects team had built pressurized blood packs that would explode at the right moment, turning the water deep red. They even built a dummy of Alex that was disturbingly lifelike. It had moving arms and legs, a torso filled with fake organs and soft flesh that would rip like a real body. Bruce was programmed to tear it to pieces. The plan was to show limbs floating, organs drifting, and the sea filling with bright red blood. To make the moment even more disturbing, the sound team recorded cracking bones and ripping flesh. To layer over the footage, this was going to be unlike anything audiences had seen before. Then, something unexpected happened. A set photographer, Alan Calicourt, took a black and white photo at exactly 2:37 p.m. on July 15, 1974. The image showed Bruce mid-lunge, his giant head filling the frame, glassy eyes locked on the dummy. The dummy's arms were stretched out, as if frozen in fear seconds before impact. Even without color, the picture was haunting. Every row of sharp teeth was visible. Every crease in the shark's rough skin stood out. It was so real that anyone looking at it could almost hear the water splashing and the screams in the background. But here's the strange part. This exact version of the attack never made it into the movie. In April 1975, at a test screening in Dallas, the audience got to see it. The reaction was immediate and intense. 13 people fainted right in their seats. 2 ran to the lobby to throw up, and others left the theater altogether. It was too much. The Motion Picture Association of America warned that if the scene stayed in the film, Jaws would receive an R rating, which would stop many families from seeing it. Universal Pictures told Spielberg to cut it, and he agreed. Spielberg believed that imagination could scare people even more than blood could. By showing less, he could build suspense and keep the audience in a constant state of nervous anticipation. This decision not only changed the way Jaws worked, but also hid one of the most violent movie moments ever filmed. Still, for Bob Matty, the man who created Bruce and spent months perfecting the animatronic shark, the decision was heartbreaking. He felt the scene showed the true horror of a shark attack, and it was frustrating to see it cut. But Spielberg had another reason for keeping Bruce. Off-screen early in the movie, the mechanical shark was unpredictable and often broke down. By saving the big reveal until later, Spielberg avoided exposing its flaws and made Bruce's eventual appearance much more powerful. What makes this story even more interesting is the mistake in the surviving evidence. That rare photo of Bruce and the dummy shows them in a position that doesn't match any shot in the final film. The raft's angle is different, Bruce's jaws are wider, and the dummy's posture is not the same. This is because the picture came from a separate effects setup, a version of the scene that was filmed but never used. This small difference has become a fascinating continuity gap that only Sharpeye fans notice. And this wasn't the only scene cut from Jaws 4 being too intense. The famous estuary scene also had a deleted moment that was far more graphic than what ended up in theaters. In the film, the estuary looks peaceful. Children sail small boats, and Chief Brody's son Michael is among them. The sun is shining, the water is calm, and everything feels safe. Then, out of nowhere, Bruce enters the shallow pond. It's not the open ocean, and it's not the crowded beach. It's a place that feels private and harmless. That makes the attack even more shocking. Boats flip, children scream, and the once-calm water becomes a scene of chaos. Spielberg shot it in broad daylight, letting the audience see every reaction and every splash. The soundtrack builds with John Williams' famous shark theme, starting soft and growing louder until the tension is unbearable. For the first time, the audience sees more than a fin. There's a brief glimpse of the shark's full body. But even then, most of Bruce stays hidden, forcing the imagination to do the rest. What many people don't know is that immediately after this scene, Spielberg had originally filmed another attack. In it, a man in a paddle boat sees the children in danger and rows toward them to help. That man was played by stuntman Ted Grossman. In the deleted version, Bruce rises from the water beneath him, slams into the boat, and bites down on the man. The man's body dangles from the shark's mouth like a figurehead on a ship. Even worse, he is still conscious, spitting blood as the shark drags him through the water. The camera lingers on him for 10 long seconds, while Michael Brody watches in horror from only a few feet away. It was gruesome, shocking, intense, and it completely broke the slow-build tension that Spielberg wanted for the rest of the movie. So, like the original raft attack, it was cut. These decisions kept Jaws from becoming just another gory monster movie. Instead, it became a masterclass in suspense, showing just enough to terrify, but never enough to satisfy the audience's curiosity. That's why viewers leaned forward in their seats, hearts pounding, waiting for the next glimpse of Bruce, and that's why the few surviving photos and deleted scenes have become legends, pieces of movie history that reveal just how far Spielberg and his team were willing to go before pulling back, while those deleted scenes and rare production photos have become treasures for fans. They were only part of what made Jaws a game-changer. Universal Pictures didn't just release a movie. They launched a marketing campaign that transformed the way Hollywood worked. At the time, big summer movies weren't a common thing. Studios usually saved their most expensive films for the winter holidays, but Universal took a risk. They spent $1.8 million on TV advertising, an unheard-of amount in 1975. 3 nights before Jaws came out, they aired primetime commercials showing a shark rising from the deep toward a swimming woman, all backed by John Williams' haunting 2-note theme. It didn't stop there. On June 20th, 1975, Jaws opened in 464 theaters nationwide on the same day, a massive release for that era. Till then, films usually rolled out slowly from city to city. Universal's strategy made it feel like a national event, and it worked. The film made $7 million in its opening weekend. Huge for the time. Over the next 78 days, it broke The Godfather's box office record, earning $260 million in the U.S., which is about $1.52 billion today when adjusted for inflation. Around the world, it earned more than $470 million, making it the highest-grossing film in history until Star Wars came out 2 years later. The cast members saw their careers skyrocket. Roy Scheider, who played Chief Brody, went on to star in major films like Marathon Man and all that jazz. Even returning for Jaws 2, Richard Dreyfuss, who played Hooper, became the youngest man to win the Best Actor Oscar at the time for The Goodbye Girl. Robert Shaw, who played Quint, continued acting in big films until his sudden death in 1978. Behind the scenes, Spielberg's career took off. He followed Jaws with Close Encounters of the Third Kind, another hit that proved he wasn't just lucky, he was a visionary. Over the years, the cast and crew of Jaws reunited for anniversaries and special screenings, often sharing stories about the difficult shoot, the unpredictable shark, and the deleted scenes that audiences still ask about. That's the magic of Jaws. It wasn't just about what you saw on screen. It was about what you didn't see, the moments hidden in editing rooms. It's the rare photos tucked away in boxes, and the mistakes or differences that sharp-eyed fans can still spot if they look closely. The Jaws mistake isn't just one small slip in continuity. It's a doorway into a whole side of the movie that the public was never meant to witness. And maybe, just maybe, that's why Jaws has stayed alive in pop culture for almost 50 years. Because the scariest thing is knowing there's more out there. We haven't seen it yet.